Feel good. I'm ready to run another stage. I could run to the rest of the race if they want me to.
What did you think about
I'm used to Winston Cup racing where it's like 5-hour racing. This hour to 2 at a time is not much as far as the driving goes.
Let's see your hands. You got any blisters on your hands? No blisters.
Very, very soft.
Woo! He's not kidding about that.
We had a share of trouble from I had a flat tire to Dale Jr. looped it a couple times. Kelly looped it once, and then we had transmissions and a half shaft problem. So to be back in the second in the class and running where we are, I'm pretty happy with that. But the car was super in the rain. I got in it for 2 stints in the rain, and it was just awesome. So had a great time. It rained pretty hard there a couple times, but it was fun racing.
Mentally, how were you able to get your rest and keep yourself strong and alert?
Well, I hadn't drove about 4.5 hours, so I'm pretty fresh. I think Andy's drove the most, and Kelly's the next, and Dale Jr. and I about the same. So I think Dale Jr.'s going to get back in one time, and then Andy's going to finish the race. Kelly's in it now, so I think I'm through for the day.
Are you through forever, though, with sports car racing?
I don't know.
What about Le Mans?
These guys race up at Watkins Glen, I think, when the Cup cars are up there. I might have to go and practice a little bit.
Well, one way or the other, he has been a great story, as has Dale Jr. In fact, the NASCAR stockers generally are doing very well, because back there in 8th place is the number 43 Porsche with Kyle Petty on the driver's strength. Now there is Butch Leitzinger climbing into the race-leading car. Here's Dave Burns.
And Leitzinger is already in, buckled in. No problems really to make Butch nervous, although they're looking at something on the right front now, and they are going to remove the front bodywork just a bit. They've unclipped it. The lights go off, and they're going to put the other one on. Let's take a look and see how much tape is on here, Bob. During the night, all night long, if people have been watching, they have swapped front ends back and forth. This one going on has less tape on it, so they may be running just a bit hot now. And they've been so wet, they haven't been able to tape them up as they come into pit road. So they've just taped up the bodywork, and they've added them to the car this way. Taking the time to do it, because of the lead they have, seems to be appropriate. And as they're doing this, we'll try to scoot around and see if we can catch up with James Weaver. But this does look all very routine as he now scoots right off. And I do have James, if he'll step over here just a bit. James, it looks like maybe it was a bit up on temperature. Is that why the nose changed?
No, when they had that yellow flag out here, one of the cars in front picked up some debris and shot it through the front of the nose. So just a precaution.
So nothing that you noticed, but just precautionary entirely?
No, I didn't run over anything. It came off the car in front, so we knew I hadn't picked up a puncture. But when you smash the nose up like that, you don't want any of it getting on the tyre. So we got a bit of a lead. So, and it doesn't do any harm just to blow the radiator out and have a quick look.
Now, this didn't have as much tape on it, so is cooling down a little bit going to be okay, temperature-wise?
Yeah, we needed to take a bit of tape off.
Great. That explains. Let's go down to Guy Hobbs.
Thank you, Dave. I'm in the other end of the pit lane where things aren't quite as happy or as excited. I'm with Jack Baldwin. Jack, you appeared from what looked like a bit of a rest. I said the car's behind the wall, and you said, oh, are we? But it's not the first time you've been back there. They're changing the second ECU unit. Certainly the weather has not helped you guys.
No, I'll tell you, the rain has just killed us. The car, mechanically it's sound. We hit the setup beautifully. In the dry, the car's awesome. But, when it starts raining, I mean, it's one thing after another. And it's the first time we've run the car, in the rain, and the first time we run the car here. So, it's the 24 hours of Daytona is what it is.
They'll hopefully have that car back out and you'll have a chance to get back out there, because when you are running, you're one of the quickest cars out on the run.
Yeah, that's the fun, and it's fun to drive, and it's great out there. And I had some great races with, the Dyson cars last night and the Ferrari. But, we're not going to give up. It's been, for me, it was a tough week last week. My mom was in the hospital, and I lost a great friend of mine last week, George Hyder, who was my trainer and one of my best friends. And, he inspired everybody and motivated everybody never to quit, never to give up. And so we're not going to give up. We're going to come out here. We're going to finish this race. And, it's and the kids are home. Allison, Erica, and my wife Joan are home watching. So, hey, it's we're here. We're good.
1969 highlights.
In 1969, Porsche brought 5 908 coupes to Daytona. They had Vic Elford and Brian Redmond on the pole, and Roger Penske's Lola, co-driven by Mark Donohue and Chuck Parsons, was alongside. The Porsches held the early lead, but it wouldn't be long before they began having problems. Playing the waiting game was our own David Hobbs, co-driving with Mike Halewood in a Ford GT40, running a pace that put them into the lead shortly past midnight. After sunrise, however, the car would retire due to overheating problems. The Donohue-Parsons Lola, which at one point during the middle of the night had fallen to 11th after losing an hour to repair the exhaust system, outlasted the rest of the field to take the checkered flag. It was the one and only win at the 24 Hours of Daytona for Donohue, who 6 years later would lose his life in a Formula One crash in Austria.
One of the great drivers in American history, Mark Donohue. His book, The Unfair Advantage, is being republished by his sons, Michael and David. You can look for that, an updated version of that great book in a motoring bookstore near you. Now about you, Habbo. You were sort of a slim, handsome young dude back in those days.
I don't know what happened.
He's
32 years happened. That's what happened.
Neither of those things now.
Got that bit right. Yeah, it was another big disappointment. That the year before, '68, I drove with Paul Hawkins, and we had that one very, very nicely locked up, and the fuel tank split, of all things. They had the rubber tanks inside the side sponsons there, and it just wore through. And then in '69, overheating. I'm not quite sure. Sam's got a theory about that, but
Leitzinger is going slowly. This is the race-leading car, and he's looking down in the cockpit.
Unbelievable.
Deja vu all over again for these guys.
Last year, they had a 13-lap. The right front.
Front flat.
Just past the pit.
More than that. There's more than a flat.
Uh-oh.
Can this be happening? 13-lap lead a year ago that went for naught. And now a 27-lap lead that is in jeopardy.
Butch talking to the crew there.
A lot of smoke in the cockpit.
This is amazing to have a look right in at the man as he experiences what must be as low a moment as you can have as a racer.
Of course, he has to put all that aside right now and become a mechanic.
I don't think the range of mechanical work that this car may require is going to be possible to execute out where he is.
He is just at the far side of the Rodriguez curve on the infield.
They had a power steering pump go earlier in the night. Now, he is right directly behind the pits. I mean, it's only as we look out maybe 100 to 200 yards from there to their pit.
There's the crew. That's Pat Smith, the crew chief, on the right, looking up at the timing and scoring. And now they're looking at the same pictures you are.
Butch has a pretty final-looking walk face on there, doesn't he?
Needless to say, this puts a event.
Oh, my. What an incredible turn of events here with a little over 3 hours to go in this race.
We had only to bring up Hobbs's bad luck, and it seems to
be contagious.
The car looks so forlorn and forgotten, doesn't it? And yet, even now, it holds a 20-some-odd lap lead. Isn't that spooky?
Well, they got plenty of time to fix it if it's fixable.
Meanwhile, down in the Dyson pits, Andrew Marriott.
Oh, Pat's just on the radio. What have they said on the radio? What do you think's happened here? No, we lost the motor. It's a terminal problem. A terminal problem.
Yeah, terminal problem.
What is it? Thrown a rod or something like that?
Yeah, something like that. Big boom.
Pat, I feel for you, man. I feel for you.
It's okay. We've won it enough times. Let somebody else have a turn.
Next time, sir. So there you hear it. The car is definitely out. The motor has blown up. Maybe it's a rod that's let go, and well, that Dyson effort comes to an end.
Meanwhile, down in the Corvette pits, they have received the information that the race-leading sports racer prototype is done for good. And that means this team, and you heard Ron Fellows yesterday in our coverage say, no, we're just after a class win. That's what we've set as our goal. Well, now they not only stand in position to win the class, but to win the overall.
For the second consecutive year, a GT car will win. But, of course, they have a long way to go. It's 9:30 in the morning.
Well, if they don't win, the 31 car will win, which is also a GT car. If they don't win, the number 3 car with the Earnhardts will win, which is a GTS. The next time we come to a sports racer, it's right down in 12th spot.
And if they don't win, I'm getting in my rent-a-car and getting out there and
pick up a Rolex.
Try at it.
Oh, and an amazing turn of events. And you're right on it, David. There is a string of GT category cars, either the big bore GTS or the smaller GT cars, from second place stretching all the way back through 11th place. Jim Downing's Mazda-powered Kudzu is running in 12th place, about 65 laps off the pace. And you made the point, Sam, there's a long way to go.
65 laps. They won't do 65 laps between now and
exactly
1:30
the end of the race.
So they could still win. They wouldn't win.
But they will win their class, although they could conceivably finish outside the top 10. Well, this will definitely be another one for the history books, the Rolex 24. Keep in mind, that car, the number 2 Chevy Corvette C5R, is about 80 miles out of the lead, but the race lead and perhaps an overall victory is still out there. All they have to do is go and get it. We'll take a quick break and return shortly with more live coverage as we march to the checkered flag in the 39th Rolex. One team's despair, another's elation.
Welcome back to the live coverage on Speed Vision of the 24 Hours of Daytona. Yesterday afternoon, Ron Fellows, we interviewed you and you said, we're just here looking for a class victory, not an overall victory. Well, about 2 minutes ago, you suddenly inherited basically the lead. You're going to make up those laps and take over the lead from a very unfortunate time for the Dyson car. Now you've got to be thinking overall victory.
Well, it's still awful early. I mean, there's not that much time left in a 24-hour race, but you know what happened to Dyson can happen to any number of us. You hate to wish bad luck on anybody, and especially the Dyson guys. Anyway, we'll just keep plugging away.
Fingers are crossed all over the place in the back of this pit area. Butch Heising has just made it back to the Dyson pit, so we'll send it down here to Andrew Marriott. The station.
Yeah, no warnings on the front straight, and I think I'm thinking through Raj. You know, it's a pity because we were just coasting right now. You know, you think you would have thought that if it was going to blow up, it would have been when we were pressing earlier on. But yeah, the guys, everyone did a wonderful job. You know, everyone should hold their head up, but that's the way it goes.
Does it take away the gloss of these kind of races when that happens?
Well, yes it does. I mean, there's nothing more frustrating than doing a race that's this grueling and this long and coming this close and then throwing it all away. But, you know, I mean, you can see that in the crew's eyes, you know. I mean, they worked so hard for this. So, you know, I feel very bad for all of them.
Meanwhile, you can look forward to Le Mans and driving that Bentley.
Yeah, the Bentley should be wonderful. I don't want to think about another 24-hour race at this point, but yeah, give me another week and I'll be good.
You did a fabulous job. Congratulations. You did a great job. Congratulations.
No question about it. They did a great job, as did the crew, and I'm glad Butch mentioned all that they went through.
The feeling of depression around a pit, a whole team at this stage of the game when you do drop out. Like in that 68 race, it was not much different. This was about 7:30 in the morning. It was just daylight. I came in and the team manager I was sitting in the car, and he just signaled me out, and the fuel was running out the bottom of the car, and you're just hard because you just know right there and then that this ain't going to be fixed. And everybody was just so completely worn out at that stage.
Psychologically, when you've come through the night, you see the daylight again, feel you're there, and you're not there. It's a long way to go, but it seems as if the devils of the night have not gotten you. You're back operating again, and you've got to be able to make it. Nothing can happen that you can't surround. When your engine blows, such as happened to Butch, it's devastating. There's nothing they can do about this.
Just when you think time is on your side.
Yeah. And of course, Ron Fellows is certainly right to be cautious at this stage of the game. I mean, they certainly haven't won this race yet.
You know, there are all sorts of ways cars break down. Sometimes you see little signs first, overheating, or something's leaking, or the clutch is slipping, or there's a problem with the gearbox, and you realize that it's getting worse and worse, and maybe it's going to be terminal. But in this case, the car was running just fine, and then suddenly, boom, out of nowhere, it was dead.
Of course, the same happened to them last year. They were running just fine with a 13-lap lead, and it suddenly dropped the valve.
They become the 24th car officially retired from the race, and that tells you something about how hard these crews have worked. There's a lot of walking wounded out there, and a lot of tales of courage behind them. 9th, Rolex 24 at Daytona. I'm Bob Varsha with Sam Posey, David Hobbs down in the pit lane, Guy Hobbs, and now standing by the owner of the car that has just left the race after amassing a nearly 24-lap lead, Rob Dyson.
Well, Rob, you just came in and then you knew, I guess, already that your lead car had already blown up.
Yeah, I made it through I came through into the International Horseshoe and I saw Butch parked there. And where it was parked, I knew there was something serious. And we have a rule, we don't talk about the other cars, but I called in and said, hey, what's the story? They told me that an engine let loose on a main straight and he pulled it over.
Some words for those three great drivers that did a wonderful job out there.
Well, they're great guys, you know. I'm only sorry that the engine didn't hold together. We can pull it all together. It's extremely disappointing.
But you live to fight. Are you going to do another 24-hour race this year at Le Mans?
Oh, I don't think so. Not yet. We don't have a car yet. And besides, the guys are on loan to the Bentley people, so I don't think we'll be doing Le Mans, but I sure want to come back to this place. But it was extremely disappointing. It's an honor and a privilege to work with these guys.
Yeah, I mean, with Butch, we saw you there commiserating with him, a really nice moment, and an emotional moment too. Yeah. Okay, well, Robbie, you said all choked up now, and it's not surprising. Back to you in the booth.
Rob Dyson is a very, very successful businessman, and in so doing, I'm sure he's had those moments when he had to be firm with people and had to recognize talent in people and have the courage to let them do their jobs. And right now, there's the emotional side of a very, very successful man and racer who has seen those people whom he gave the resources and the freedom to do their job suffer their own biggest frustration. And he feels it as though he were at the controls of that car when the engine let go.
Well, this is partly where exhaustion plays its role, too. He's been up all night, of course. The profoundness of the loss, and there's just no bringing it back. As you point out, he's a successful businessman, a very wealthy man, but I think he's all too aware that loss can be irredeemable, and that's what's just happened.
And of course, successful businessmen who get involved in racing just aren't ready for that third sort of aspect of business.
That lack of control.
Normally, exactly, total lack of control. Every time they go into a boardroom somewhere, they want to buy a company, they want to do something. They either do it or they don't, and there's a good reason why it can't be done. When they come to a race, there's no logical reason why it should all go wrong at all. And it's very hard for people that don't actually come right out of a racing practice to understand it.
Here's our Kumho Tires race recap, and perhaps we should call it the Kumho Rain Tires race recap because it has begun falling heavily again here at Daytona International Speedway. The leader remains Butch Leitzinger, Andy Wallace, and James Weaver in that Dyson Racing Ford. But in 20 laps, Frank Freon there in the number 2 Corvette C5R will take over the overall race lead as well as the GTS class lead. The average speed 103 miles an hour despite 10 long caution flags that have had us under yellow for about 10 hours of the 20 hours and change that have been run to this point. We're coming up on 3 hours to go. And yet another amazing story of perseverance, joy, and frustration. Endurance sports car racing on Speed Vision. 7-lap lead when the engine broke, and the 2 is the pursuing car hoping to take over that race lead. Here's a look at Rob Dyson, his team, and his thoughts.
For nearly 4 decades, the Rolex 24 at Daytona has kicked off the North American sports car racing season. And like many of the competitors here, Rob Dyson believes it's one of the biggest events on the entire worldwide racing calendar.
You know, you've got Daytona and the Indianapolis 500 and maybe the British Grand Prix and Grand Prix of Monte Carlo and maybe Sebring and maybe Le Mans. And it's a major event. To win it takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of skill, and an immense amount of luck.
Rob speaks from experience. Having first brought his team to the Rolex 24 in 1986, he suffered through 11 tough years.
At one point or another, we always led the event. Only we never quite led it at the correct time, which is obviously at the end of the 24 hours.
But all of that changed in 1997, when finally Dyson and his team won their first Rolex, defeating the Ferrari 333 SP of Andy Evans in a stirring contest. The car was overheating, blowing smoke, and it needed oil at every pit stop. But somehow, despite all the problems, the machine held together. The emotions for Rob Dyson at the time were overwhelming.
I think it was an emotional time for me for a number of reasons, one of which is that it was finally an affirmation that what we had been doing for all these years, we finally put it together. We were finally able to put it over the top. We've been so close, and it was kind of the temptation of the we could almost taste it, but we never were able to put it across. Fortunately, we were able to do it. So the first time, I think, was clearly the most emotional. The second time for us, ironically, was emotional for another reason, and it was emotional because it gave us a chance to really kind of confirm that it was not a fluke.
And for the 37th time, victory at the Rolex. For the second time, it goes to Dyson Racing and Butch Leitzinger driving the car under the checkered flag.
It kind of confirmed that, hey, maybe, to ourselves, that maybe we know what we're doing, and that maybe we can not rest on our laurels, but we can build on that and try to keep winning this race, and others as well. And we've been able to do that, fortunately.
And now Rob would like to add his team's name to the list of winners at a couple of other famous tracks, Sebring and Le Mans. And he plans on doing this with the help of new equipment. The new evolutionary, soon-to-be debuted Riley and Scott Mark III C chassis.
Well, 2001 is going to be a little bit expanded for us. We're going to spread our wings a little bit. I don't know whether it's going to be the success that we've had in the past, but I think we've got to step out with this new car. We've got to try to see if we can make it work, and a way to do that is to develop it, and we've got to develop it and make it applicable to both series, and hopefully we can bridge the gap and be competitive.
One of the great ironies of what we just witnessed with Dyson Racing dropping out with a 27-lap lead is if they had held station, they would have posted one of the top 5 largest winning margins in history. Instead, gone down to defeat. There is the 31 car, third in the race. They're about to have a driver change. Apparently the radio's not working. There's a signal to the pits that the driver is coming in. Andrew Marriott stands by in the pit.
With the Porsche Junior team and of course with Barber, but you never in your wildest dreams expected to be in second place, did you?
No, never. But it's still a long way to go, and it can happen a lot. Also here the 86 car, which is second in our class, they are pretty strong in the wet conditions, so we have to wait.
How hard are you pushing? Are you pushing hard?
I pushed it hard through the night, and when it was dry, also pushed hard when it was wet this morning. But now we're trying to take a little bit the speed out and keep the things clear.
Is this car much different to the Barber car you drove last year? Is this car much different to the Barber car you drove last year?
No, there's no difference at all.
Okay, Lucas, the best of luck. Could be a big day for you.
See, they're caught right in between how hard you push. It's raining like hell right now, and you risk everything for that extra position. I mean, you're running up high beyond your dreams, but you've got that one more spot you've got to pick off.
Right there, he's in a battle with the 43, the Orbit Racing Porsche 911 GT3 RS, which is shared by, among others, Kyle Petty, and that car is third in the class, just a few laps behind the 31 machine. So that is very much a live intra-class rivalry right there. We'll take a break. Butch Leitzinger remains the race leader, but he is not moving. We'll be back. Welcome back live to Daytona International Speedway, where there is, well, I guess we might call the race leader-elect. The number 2 factory Corvette C5R runs 15 laps down to the number 16 Dyson Racing Riley and Scott Ford. But if you've been with us, you know that in the most dramatic turn of what has been a very dramatic race to this point, the Dyson Racing machine has holed the engine block and stopped. They will not return, so it is up to the Corvette now to make its way to the race lead and persevere through the final 3 hours, sure to be packed with more drama before they might potentially claim the first ever overall win at the Rolex 24 for this 3-year-old Chevy Corvette effort. Welcome back live to Daytona International Speedway, everyone. I'm Bob Varsha, along with David Hobbs and Sam Posey. It has been a remarkable race with 3 hours yet to run. Who knows what might happen? But I don't think anything thus far compares with the Dyson Racing team dropping out with a 27-lap lead.
Well, the only thing I can say is I absolutely know exactly how they feel. There's absolutely no way you can describe the gut-wrenching feeling dropping out of one of these races, especially late on in the going when you have such a commanded lead and lock on the race. The disappointment is, look, I can't tell you how disappointing it is, and I'm sure they can't either. We saw that great preview of the Dyson team where he explained how they'd done this thing 11 times before they won it the first time. At least they have won it a couple of times, so one can't feel too bad for them. But now, of course, all eyes are focused on the Corvette team, and of course, particularly Earnhardt's running now in the potential 3rd spot overall. And there's a long way to go yet, another 3 hours. I mean, a lot can happen between now and the end. And yet again, it's raining cats and dogs.
No question about it. We've seen lots of highlights of previous years of this race, Sam, but I can't ever recall a race that's been as wet as this one.
Well, exactly, and the rain, of course, makes everything so much more variable. There's so many more surprising things that could happen because of the slickness of the tracks. But the Corvette has handled the rain very well. We heard from Dale Earnhardt, who said that the car felt very, very good to him in the rain. It seems very steady on the road. This is an imponderable thing, but it's bright yellow, so everyone sees it coming, which is a bad asset for it to be. And I think that the Corvettes, Dyson's loss is their gain, and they've handled themselves superbly in the race so far. And I think we've now got to start celebrating something that's really going to be very, very special, which is an American manufacturer winning this major race with a pair of really beautifully run cars.
No question about it. It's been an amazing race in so many ways, and you can be a part of these last 3 hours of the race. Jeremy Dale is hard at work accepting emails. If you'd like to get in contact with Jeremy and our booth announcers, just get on the speedvision.com website and click on the email and follow the instructions to reach us. And don't forget, our speed line will be working throughout these final 3 hours. The Eastlam speed line. You can see your question answered on your television screen. Jeremy, how are things going over there?
Well, so far I've had a lot of very positive email about you, Bob. Quite a bit positive about Sam. Not much about David.
That's what we expect. That's the way.
But I think that's normally what we get.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Well, before it gets too unpositive, we've got. I have in my hand here the best facts so far from Mark Williams in Oceanside, California, who says, "Outstanding coverage. Your staff should be the ones walking away with the watch."
Hear, hear.
I cannot wait to see the 24 hours of Le Mans. Speed Vision rules. He's dead right on that watch business.
That's right. Don't wait for Le Mans, because remember, we're also going to be coming to you live and flag to flag with the 12 hours of Sebring. That'll be coming up.
We'll take a watch for that too.
Absolutely. We'll get a collection going. Over 8,000 separate emails thus far. Keep them coming. We've got 3 hours to go. We'll get to as many of them as we can. Right now, let's get back down to that rainy pit lane and Andrew Marriott.
It is rainy, and Wolfgang Kaufmann has just brought the car in. This car which could even finish in the top 3. Now, Wolfgang is the lead driver in this car now. 10 years ago, Wolfgang used to race wheel to wheel against Michael Schumacher in Formula 3. You might have made it to Formula 1, Wolfgang.
Yeah, I mean, about that, it's still a long time ago, but it's true. I was running against Schumacher, Frentzen, and all that guys who are now in Formula 1. But now I'm GT racing, and, I enjoy it really to do that.
Now, you said to me before we had the interview that you came to Florida for the sun. What's happened?
I mean, anyway, all the time, all the other years when I was here in Daytona, it was a beautiful weather, but now it's raining. I mean, personally, for me, it doesn't matter really, because I like the rain, I enjoy the rain, and I'm glad that it's really raining. So it's for us a chance to grow up, and because the car, the tires, everything is doing really well.
Wolfgang, great to keep it going to the end, and I'm going to throw back to my colleague, Guy Hobbs. Thank you.
We're down in the Archangel Motorsports entry pit area where they are trying desperately to get the attention of their driver to come in. There is no radio contact. They've asked officials to black flag him. They did this time by. He's going so slowly he kind of missed the black flag. The problem is he's on intermediates. They want to get him in and put 4 wets on there. Trying to get him in because you need the 4 wets because, again, it is just pouring down. And then right next to them, the Kudzu with Jim Downing about to get in and getting ready to make their pit stop as they work their way up in the sports racing prototype class.
All right, thanks very much, gentlemen. There is that American-built Corvette going around. I suppose it's an interesting argument in this day of worldwide, very heavily integrated motorsports. What is exactly an American car? I mean, arguably, last year's winners in the Viper, although it was a French team, were an American chassis.
Car, yeah. Of course, globalization. Last year, of course, the Viper chassis and an American-built car, but of course owned by Mercedes-Benz itself. So, what can you call these cars? But I'll tell you what you can call that. Very, very wet. So there's absolutely no let-up for these guys. And we're looking out the booth window and you can see nothing but grey, scudding, low cloud. It's obviously going to rain for some considerable time to come.
There is the Dennis Spencer, Rich Grupp, Ryan Hampton machine that was involved in one of the very frightening incidents during the nighttime hours at about 2 o'clock this morning. Got skittered across the grass at turn 1 and center punched a GT class car going in the opposite direction at turn 6. It's one of the many events that have punctuated this event. The big rooster tail means the Corvette is up to reasonable speed, but the puddles are building in the pit lane, and we still have a long way to go at Daytona. Still race leading number 16 that is stationary at the side of the track. Meanwhile, Kelly Collins hops out and Andy Pilgrim into the number 3 car. So the road racing veterans on that number 3 team doing the bulk of the driving in these miserable conditions with the rain still teeming down. Let's go to the pit lane and Guy Hobbs.
Yeah, we're in the Corvette pit. You can see a routine stop, adding fuel. We have a driver change going on to the full wets. Actually, they're running full wets before. A little trouble with the right rear at the moment. But the hands go up to say all clear. There is some damage to the left front fender of this Corvette, and they decided just to leave it as it is. They banged it around a bit. If they can't really add any take, there's nothing sticking down here because it's so wet. And they're just going to let it run as is. Now the neck goes up. And we'll see if we can get a word. The Kelly Collins getting out. And then the team being waved on out, so the 3 back underway. In the meantime, we'll look for Frank Frion, who stepped out of the number 2.
Andy Pilgrim takes over the number 3 car, takes it down the track. He has done most of the driving for this team, which figures since he is the road racing veteran of the group and also an extraordinary finisher. His record for reaching the end of long endurance sports car races is second to none. There have been so many great races, so many dramatic turns over the years. We've shared many of them with you, and we'd like to do so again now. Take you back to one of my earliest Rolex 24s back in 1986.
The Corvette GTP machine, owned by Rick Hendrick, qualified on the pole for the 1986 running of the Rolex 24, but mechanical problems caused Hendrick to withdraw the car before the event ever started. Following the drop of the green, the Porsche 962, driven by Rob Dyson, in its first ever Daytona 24-hour appearance, took the early lead. 3 other 962s would go on to hold the top spot, setting a demanding pace that caused many to drop out just a few hours in. By midnight, Jim Busby's Porsche was on the point. Around 5 o'clock in the morning, Al Holbert's 962 slowed with throttle problems. Shortly thereafter, defending race champion A.J. Foyt got into his Preston Hen-owned Porsche, and by daybreak, he held the lead, until suffering throttle problems that forced Foyt to make a lengthy pit stop of his own. That enabled the Holbert team to make up an 8-lap deficit and take the checkered flag. It was the first Rolex victory for drivers Al Unser Jr., Derek Bell, and Holbert, who would go on to win the following year as well, before tragically losing his life in a plane crash in 1988.
Once again, another story of a dramatic Sunday on the Rolex 24 as the lead changed hands in the most improbable circumstances.
And of course, they came back from a big deficit to win that race after having seen what looked like an insurmountable problem in the middle of the night. The car looking pretty bad there. It could have got stuck out on the track. It did not, and came back to win the race.
Somewhere, I suppose Al Unser Jr. might be watching and saying to himself, I looked like that in 1986.
Now he knows what I feel like seeing that 1969 race.
It continues to rain here at Daytona International Speedway, but we will continue. The checkered flag, now not long away by Daytona standards. Stay with us. Look at the highlights of hour number 21. It began with the 16-car, James Weaver at the keyboard with a handy 27-lap lead en route to what could have been an historic margin of victory. When Butch Leitzinger climbed into the car, the nose was changed. A defensive tactic that proved to be for naught. Just a couple of laps into his stint, the engine let go, and the engine crackled its death throes. We wondered if the car could be fixed. Leitzinger could talk to the team, diagnose the problem, and perhaps get back into the race. But when he unplugged, unstrapped, and walked away, Rob Dyson and the team knew that all those long hours of work were over. At the other end of the emotional spectrum, the Corvette team, and the car driven by Ron Fellows, Chris Neifel, Frank Freon, and Johnny O'Connell were suddenly in position to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. We are back live. Ron Fellows, the team leader on the 2-car, is behind the controls. Guy Hobbs is standing by with Frank Freon.
And Frank is able to smile because obviously quite happy despite all this horrible cold rain that's falling. Frank, you just got out the car, handed over to Ron Fellows. How did it feel for you, or what did you think when you went by and saw Butch Leitzinger pulled off to the side of the road?
Well, you know, we're still very far from the end of the race. So I think for the GM, team, it's great to be, in a good position and everything. But so many things still happen. That I did see them on the side, but we know that it's up and down all the time during these kind of long races. So it don't really change anything for the GM team.
Now, the moment after you saw him off to the side, did you suddenly start hearing nasty little noises in the Corvette as well, and start looking at everything?
Well, it's been like that for a few hours already. So we're just all the time afraid that something is going to just give up. But we're doing our best. We are trying to take care of the car, be very careful with the traffic. But it's so difficult because sometimes you have a little bit of grip, then it rains, and all the oil, on the track, it's very slippery. So it's a bit of a challenge for all the guys on the track. It's tough.
A lot of water is beginning to gather on the track too. Before it was running off, but now we're really seeing some puddling. Has that been catching some people out by surprise?
Yeah, I'd say you have some swimming pools. Yeah, and it's because when you do some hydro planning, then you cannot do anything because you can't control that. It's really difficult to control the car when it's okay, but when you have this kind of a lot of water, it's sometimes it's like you have to get lucky.
All right, Frank, we'll keep a close eye on you. We're not saying that Frank was saying it was really wet, but when he came in, instead of asking for 4 new tires, he asked for 4 new paddles. Actually, they all came in, 2 and the 3 car came in at the same time, and that was just purely because the fuel windows just happened to match at that point.
Well, make no mistake, these conditions are just terrible, and the kind of thing that could happen to any one of the cars out there is that they could become involved in somebody else's accident, no matter how carefully you're driving yourself.
And of course,
that's the fear.
The worst thing, like Frank was saying then, when it rains that hard, that back straight as you come off NASCAR 2 and go down the back straight towards the chicane, it's very flat out there and it puddles up very, very badly. And of course, it just happens to be the fastest part of the track too.
Now, we've talked about the perseverance of the Dyson team, the good work by the Corvette teams and other. Give a call to these guys. This is the 09 Fliss Motorsports Chevy Camaro, the spirit of Daytona last year when they came out and won this race and picked up sponsorship to run the rest of the year and won. Excuse me, they didn't win here last year at Daytona. They were second, but they went on to win the series championship in the new American GT category. Now, the car has looked like this since about 3 hours into this race. They just strapped some headlights to the framework to keep the car going. And that team with Craig Conway, Doug Goad, Rick McGarry, and Eric Messley have held on throughout the event. And they deserve a lot of credit for perseverance this weekend. There is the number 2 car doing battle with the number 20 sister car to the former race leader, just a few laps from having a new leader at Daytona. Daytona International Speedway, you got a brief taste of the sounds to go with the sights of this rain-washed event that has seen so much drama. This is the number 30 Master Car Ferrari running in the GT category. Ferrari V8 power sponsorship from Kumho Tires. Tony Ring from Karlskoga, Sweden leads the driver's strength with Sergei Zoblin, Fabian Peroni, and Andrea Montermini. Formula One and kart fame, and that's one another of the American GT cars. That's the number 44. Is that the Vardy, Lyndon and David Amick team?
Again, it's that pit lane. I tell you, that caught out a lot of people.
Including them before. They had trouble there before.
Big puddle just before this part of that pit exit. He's lucky to have found the Armco. As you can see to the right of the tail, there is no Armco between the pit exit and the racetrack.
Desperate race these guys have had, because when they're running, they're clearly faster than the 11 car that's leading the class, and that's done some severe damage in front. And of course, he's going to have to go all the way around. He can't.
And he's blocking the exit right now.
The exit, and he can't.
And there is a car in pit lane, a Porsche,
stuck behind
about to go back out.
Oh dear, because the car obviously won't go forwards here.
And he have to back it on the grass.
I think he's I think he could get by now.
Wow,
that's an ugly scene, to say the least.
David and Lyndon Amick, Joe Vardy, very experienced here at Daytona, and Bill Lester.
Now he's going to try to back all the way around back into the pits.
See the puddle to the left. I wonder if he hit that puddle and got caught out. Maybe.
Well, I think that little left-hand kink there is very tight. It's very narrow, and of course it gets very slippery because a lot of these cars, as they leave, are dripping fuel and other fluids out underneath them, and they're going so slowly that it has time to fall onto the road, and it makes it terrifically slippery there.
Oh, right. And of course, that's often when you're reaching up for that last tug on your
belt, and suddenly
you're really not paying much attention because you're going so slow.
Yeah.
And we've seen it happen before. I recall Davy Jones, I think, with the Jaguar team, hit the Armco at the end of the pit exit in a previous iteration of this race. Now let's get down to Andrew Marriott in the pit lane with the story of this number 30 Ferrari GT car.
Yeah, well, I got Tommy Ring with me, and Tommy is normally a TV broadcaster. He broadcasts for Eurosport in Swedish, but he speaks very good English. Tommy, you enjoying this race in this Kumho back car?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was supposed to be a little bit of a tire test, and I mean, with this changeable weather conditions, it's okay, a little bit more rain than we expected, but still very good experience.
The Korean Tyre Company, that's new in Britain. They're already very successful in rallying in the forest, but racing here is a new thing for Kumho.
Yeah, I mean, we have a good drivers line up. We have a very good team. Unfortunately, a very slow car, but on the other hand, we're doing this in a way to achieve experience here at Daytona and hopefully come back with something quicker for next year.
You did think you were going to have a different Ferrari to the 355 you've got. What happened with that project?
Nah, we didn't manage to get it ready in time, basically. It was supposed to be the new 360 GT3, and of course it would have been much quicker and more competitive, but we said, okay, we do it with the old 355, hope to finish the race, what we hopefully do, and just test the tires.
Tommy ringing the bells there. Back to you in the booth.
That was Andrew Marriott with your Kumho Tires update. Meanwhile, now the number 3 Corvette appears to be very, very slow. That's Andy Pilgrim.
Now, this is the first evidence. This, of course, is the Earnhardt-driven car with Andy Pilgrim up, but this is the first evidence of trouble on the track for a Corvette.
Oh, he's a long way from home.
Yes, he is.
Have to make his way all the way around the track apron on the NASCAR oval, plus the chicane.
This will send shudders of fear through the entire team, doubtless.
Trying to get fuel. They had a fuel problem earlier on. You remember they had to push it in very early on.
He's jerking the car left to right. It's either that or a steering or suspension problem. I'm guessing Calvin Fish has more from the pits.
Well, I just got down here, Bob, and the Corvette crew scrambled around. They believe they have a half shaft going on that car. That would be the second time it's happened on that car. They changed the gearbox when Dale Jr. was in the car. He'd never really driven a car when a half shaft had broken like that. He thought the gearbox had blown up, so they changed the gearbox and the half shaft, probably unnecessarily, but now they're hoping that Andy can get the car back and effect a repair on that. They can do the half shaft pretty quickly, I would imagine, probably about 6 to 8 minutes to get that one done, but of course he has to get it back here first.
Well, the specter of a Porsche emerging at the front of this race looms. They have won more than any other mark, over 20 races. 11 different team marks have won here, including Chevrolet in 1969 as an engine only, never as a whole car. But this is, we'll have to see what happens here, but this is an extraordinary development when you consider that the Dyson car went out less than an hour ago. There's just now 2.5 hours to go in the race. I mean, the attrition is hitting hard right near the end.
This is truly the witching hour. As you get closer and closer to the end of a 24-hour race, the chances of something going wrong go up exponentially. Now, keep in mind, this is the 3 car, not the sister machine number 2, that is in a position to take over the overall race lead in 4 laps. But this car, the 3, is in danger of losing a position to this machine, the number 86 Porsche, that is just 1 lap down, about to bring itself up onto the same lap as the number 3 Corvette and elevate itself up into 4th in the overall, 2nd in GT. There's the number 2 car making its way inexorably toward the overall race lead and a possible spectacular victory here at Daytona, but that's still more than 2 hours away. The latest twist of fate for one of the teams still in the running. A little more than 2 hours to go in the Rolex 24. Andy Pilgrim has brought the crippled number 3 back to the pits. Now the team will go back to work. Calvin Fish is there in the Corvette pits.
Well, they're getting the routine pit stop work done out of the way. They got fuel going in. The crew is now going to the back end of the car. I think they've identified it's the left rear. I saw them pointing over to the left-hand side. So they'll take that cover off the rear wheel there, try and get the wheel off and go to town. But just spoke to one of the crew members. I guessed about 6 to 8 minutes. He said probably nearer 10. So I'll probably drop them a few laps off the pace here, but shouldn't be no big drama for this team.
Well, of course, he drove slowly around there. If he broke the drive shaft, these cars run a spool. In other words, virtually no differential or no differential at all. And one of the reasons they do that is because if something like this does happen, you can at least get back to the pits because the car will still drive. If you had a regular differential in there, obviously it wouldn't drive at all with a broken drive shaft. The downside is, of course, especially when it's wet, that it does induce a lot of push in the car, a lot of understeer because the rear wheels keep pushing the car forward. On the other hand, you do get excellent grip as well on the way out. You get good traction with a spool.
The point is that both rear wheels lock up and drive at the same rate.
Right.
Yeah, instead of a differential which allows the outside wheel to drive further than the inside.
So the inside wheel is pushing, getting a lot more grip, which tends to push the front of the car out. So you've got to have a slightly different driving technique. And of course you've got to set the car up so that it will be acceptable to use that. But the rain sometimes is not the way to go.
It's very tricky in the rain, as a matter of fact.
The Porsche 956s, when they first came out, had spools, which was a residue of Mark Donohue's work with the 917 turbo back in the early 70s. And we put a differential in ours for the German race round, and it happened to rain, and in the Fitzpatrick car, and we led 90% of the race.
There's Andy Pilgrim sitting in the car. Can Calvin get to him?
Well, I'm trying not to get in the way of the guys doing the work on the car. Andy, is a half shaft gone, similar to what happened earlier to Little D?
Yeah, exactly. Just completely stepped out. It feels like the gearbox, but it was really the half shaft. I'm pretty sure we were really lucky to be able to trundle back. I kind of idled it back, and as long as I kept kind of moving the steering to one side, it kept hooking up. So just lucky to get back.
Is this something you anticipated? I mean, with the wet conditions, there's typically less strain on the rear end, but, you know, wheel spin maybe grabbing a little bit. Is that the concern?
I'm very surprised. We've had no problems with half shafts, so the other car's been fine. I don't know what to tell you. Very surprised, really.
Well, as you can imagine, there may be some concern with the team that the other car may suffer a similar problem. But it's funny how sometimes you'll have these events, identical cars. One car will have problems, the other one will be, you know, trouble-free for 24 hours. So we'll wait and see what happens to the two machine.
All right, thank you, Calvin. Now let's take a look at what happened last night when Dale Earnhardt Jr. was in the car. Right around midnight, he felt the car losing drive. Now, he's not experienced with driving a car that uses half shafts. He thought it was the transmission. So they got the car up on the blocks, pulled out a floor panel, and in the most amazing modular fashion, just lifted a new transmission into place. When they fired up the car, the wheels started spinning. They realized it wasn't a transmission problem at all, but actually a broken half shaft. So out on the wall came a half shaft, just like you see that one back on the pit wall at the back of the picture. When that repair was made, the car went back on its way. So ironic that once again, you see that half shaft sitting on the wall, protected by latex surgical gloves. Nice touch.
From what Andy Pilgrim's saying, it doesn't sound like they have got an absolute solid spool. They must have a pretty tight lock in it, because he was saying if he could swerve, he could keep the thing driving.
Right. Well, good compromise, probably.
Yeah.
Now, half of the thoughts on the team, no doubt, as Calvin mentioned, go out to this car, the number 2, clicking along now, just one lap.
Of course,
just in time for something like that to happen.
That's exactly what we're talking about.
Oh.
And the poor guy ahead probably doesn't even mean to block. He's just struggling to keep his act together.
Well, certainly Ron Fellows has got enough experience and racecraft to not make any ridiculous mistakes at this stage of the race. But of course, you can't help, you know, Pilgrim saying, you know, I don't know what's wrong with our car, the other one's absolutely fine. But when you're in a team like this and you have 2 half shafts go on the one car, you've got to be worrying about the half shaft on this car. There's no doubt about it. You just could not be worrying about it.
He is now officially on the same lap as the leading Dyson, Riley, and Scott Ford. And that's the last time we'll be able to say that in this Rolex 24, because that car, which broke the engine, is now supplanted. I see the 74 cars back out there moving around.
Jack Baldwin said they were going to keep going, and keep going they are.
Sure
and
enough.
It's raining, and it's still going, and it's still going extremely fast.
In fact, it is in 18th in the overall, but it is
Probably the fastest moving car on the track, too, right now.
Make that 3rd in the sports racer prototype category. Many laps down, but within reach of 2nd place in the class if they can catch up to the number 20 Dyson car, which is about 8 laps ahead of it.
Which is very doable.
Yeah, his last lap was a 2 minutes 1 second.
Look at this.
Supposed to say the Corvette, whose last lap was 2:08.
Look at this exercise in caution, David. He's in a position to be that cautious, and he's going to take every advantage of it.
Well, Ron Fellows has been with this team since the beginning of the project, doing much of the development driving along with his great mate Chris Neifel. He was with the team when they picked up their first victory at Fort Worth, Texas last year. Now they're in position to take the biggest win of all in North American sports car racing here at the Rolex 24. There in the Dyson pits, they see all that hard work go away as the car is passed officially, and the Corvette from the GTS category assumes the race leadership. A spectacular story that is yet to completely play out. We will be here live until it does with the checkered flag at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Be sure you're with us for that. To the Rolex 24 at Daytona, Bob Varsha, David Hobbs, Sam Posey, along with Calvin Fish and Andrew Marriott in the pit lane. And there is the new race leader building on the lead it has assumed from the fallen car of Dyson Racing. An emotional twist just a little over, well, not quite an hour ago. The 16 car dropped out with a blown engine. Ron Fellows and company have brought this Corvette to the overall race lead. This is the 10th year for Rolex sponsoring the Rolex 24 at Daytona. We join an illustrious history of sports car racing here at the World Center of Racing. Here's a closer look.
Sports cars have been a part of the racing landscape at Daytona going back to the days of speed trials on the beach. American and European sports car drivers were more than willing to put their best efforts up against the American stock car drivers in a race against the clock. When the new Daytona International Speedway was built, sports car racing was not left behind. One of Speedway founder Bill Francene's closest friends was the Jazz King, Paul Whiteman, and Whiteman was quite the sports car enthusiast. When the new Speedway was completed in 1959, Whiteman, a member of the board, helped establish Daytona as a hub for sports car racing. In their first year of competition at the track, sports cars raced on the high banks in a counterclockwise direction, the opposite of their stock car counterparts, a practice that would change the following year. Whiteman helped secure national and regional Sports Car Club of America events for the new Speedway and brought in international endurance racing with the 3-hour Daytona Continental in 1962. The race was extended to 24 hours in 1966 and established itself as one of the premier sports car races in the world. In 1992, Rolex became the title sponsor of the Endurance Classic and further elevated the status of the event. The combination of the world-famous watchmaker and the internationally renowned Speedway with the most prestigious endurance race in America have given the Grand American Road Racing Series a great platform to open its season.
Interesting shots of Daytona International Speedway in the old days. We'd love to have some aerials for you today, but our ceiling is only about 400 feet, and we need 1,500 feet to get our helicopters up there. There's the 20 Dyson car that appears to be having problems of its own.
That ceiling, by the way, we've had some emails about why aren't we having more onboard camera. That's exactly why, because our helicopter that we need to collect the signal can't fly.
It's also about as cold as it's ever been here with a wind chill down in the low 40s. To Andrew Marriott in the pit lane.
Yeah, well, I'm just walking along with the 20 car, which is being pushed by 3 of the Dyson crew. And basically, I think they can't get it into gear and engage. Well, now you hear the car firing up again. And there is a problem with this, and this could be the end of this car. And they're putting the car back now. Calvin Fish, I think you've got John in, then we'll come back with more on this 20 car.
Johnny, it's been 7 years since you last led this one, and you were in the unlucky car that year with the Nissan team. The other car went on to win overall. But long way to go yet, mate. 2.25 hours. How do you feel?
Like there's a long way to go. You know, I mean, this Pratt Miller team has done such a great job of preparing this car. We really, you know, other than having a miss the first time it started raining real hard, this car's ran great. You know, I can't say enough about how good actually how great the Goodyear rain tire is. It's the best racing rain tire I've been on. So we do have a lot of good things going for us. You know, we've got a great engine. Gearbox has been super, and really, you know, touch wood, there haven't been any real dramas.
Since you switched over from the Panos team at the end of last year and did some testing with the team, first race, of course, you seem to have really fitted in very well, very comfortable with the car immediately.
Yeah, you know what, the Panos group is a great group of guys, and I of course, have so much respect for Don. And, but boy, it's great, you know, driving for Pratt Miller and representing GM. You know, to be driving the Corvette, you know, basically America's greatest sports car with such a great history is an honor to any driver. And, you know, with some luck, again, there's a long way to go. You know, we'll be able to get a good result here.
What's the discussion amongst the group right now? You've had 2 half-shaft problems with the sister car. I see the team getting some ready here in case you suffer a similar problem. From a driver's perspective, I don't believe you're running a spool, are you? So it's kind of difficult to get that thing to get some drive and get it back to the pit lane.
Yeah, I mean, if you had a problem, it'd be very difficult. So, you know, we're building up spares. We gave the other car our spares, and so we're going to build some up just in case, you know, we do have a problem. You know, that kind of stuff, though, I mean, we haven't had any problems. And, you know, all 4 drivers on the car, we've been trying so hard to be good to the car. And, you know, I don't really look at this type of stuff as racing. You try to look at it as, or at least I do, it's 23 hours of lapping. And then if you have to race that last hour, then you go for it. But really, and Daytona especially, this place is so hard to win because you have to look after your equipment. So we've all been being very nice to this car, and hopefully it'll pay dividends.
He said they may have to race the last hour. That may not be likely, but they're going to be keeping their fingers crossed for a very long 2 hours, and I believe 10 minutes left in the race.
Well, Calvin, Johnny makes a point that I really would like to underscore, which is this Corvette is America's great sports car. And, of course, it doesn't have a great history here at Daytona simply because much of the early racing by Corvettes were done at Sebring before Daytona really came into business. And you think back to the mid-50s with John Fitch driving the Corvette experimental cars at Sebring and also at Le Mans with the Briggs Cunningham team. And the Corvettes in the mid-50s had a period of great glory. And then they weren't raced for a long, long time. And I think what they've come back with right now, I mean, we are seeing America's greatest sports car, pretty much the only sports car, but certainly the greatest one, in its greatest moment of triumph. I mean, it's as simple as that. I mean, it's taken from 1956, I think, when they first appeared at Sebring, to now to really put it all together. But here it is, it's happening.
And somewhere, the late Zora Arkus Duntov is smiling.
I think one of the emails referred to that, too.
Absolutely.
Maybe he emailed us from where he's smiling.
Before the green flag flew at this race, some 350 examples of the Corvette were on the track taking a lap of honor. What do you know? Their racing team might do the same after the checkered flag flies. Take care. We'll be right back. Thank you one and all to you fans in the grandstand and you fans at home who have sent us email by the thousands. Keep it up. We've got a long way to go in this race. We'd like to answer as many as we can, or you may see it answered on the eSlam speed line at the bottom of your screen. It has been a remarkable race to this point, and it could be historic in so many ways. Victory for the Corvette perchance, and in second place, the GT leaders also a Porsche. In fact, they run first and second. In third in GT, which would mark the 53rd class win for a Porsche at the Rolex 24. Sam?
Well, just 31 years ago, I had the privilege of driving a Ferrari, a 3-liter car. You see it here. And notice how low it was. Mike Parks, the Englishman, and I had to have that little bump put in it so our helmets could sit up in there. I had mononucleosis and had to sleep most of the night. He did most of the driving. We finished 4th overall and won the sports prototype class. And later that a few years later, I drove with Brian Redman here and Hans Stuck and Ronnie Peterson for BMW and pulled out a huge lead only to do a David Hobbs and break down at midnight. But those are some of the memories for me in this place. And I must say, as great as those memories are, I think I'm going to remember today for what we've seen in the last 24 hours because we've certainly seen a really great Daytona.
Just look at those grandstands, too, compared to today's massive tower and 200,000 seats. The circuit has certainly changed over the years. As we watch the CSL rocket out of the pit there.
The BMW CSL was a wonderful car here, and we had about a 5-lap lead at midnight before we blew an engine. In fact, when we saw Butch Leitzinger go out there, I really my heart went out to him because I had exactly the same thing happen with not quite as big a lead, not quite as far into the race, but I know the feeling all too well. That, of course, was the John Greenwood Corvette, which was so successful here, top speed of over 220 miles an hour.
That was a monster Corvette. Whoops. One of the BMWs has gone around. That's the 52 car. We saw that off earlier. This time looks a bit more serious because he has crushed the nose against the trackside guardrail.
And he's in basically right at the end of turn 1. That's a very nasty place to be. Totally unsighted by anybody coming. Of course, the flag marshals from the local Florida region, the SCCA, doing their usual sterling job flagging. Not a great day to be a flag marshal, that is for sure. Out there for 24 hours in this rain and cold.
Absolutely. A salute to all those folks who've been out there through this abominable weather. Let's take a look at what happened. I think we just caught the end of this spin for Josefina. Boom. That was pretty pretty straightforward.
Lucky he didn't come back any further.
Yeah, it could have bounced right back into that number 66 or 67 car, the racing for the children up in Seattle. If this rain goes away, those guys have still got a chance of getting their 517 laps, but they've still got quite a few laps to go. Currently showing at 5.
This is going to be tricky getting this BMW out of the way. Luckily now everyone's had a look at it there.
Safina finished 9th in this class last year, driving with a man on the driving strength of that team this year, Carlos Necasada from Tampa, Florida, with Scooter Gable and Doc Lohman, and they have had a very eventful race.
There's the 20 car, got back up out again.
Max Pappas at the wheel. Mad Max, the ever-optimistic Italian. I tell you, that guy's attitude is absolutely bulletproof.
If you want an upbeat motivational speaker, he's your boy, I tell you.
He is amazing, and I think the lowest I've ever seen him was in the 500-miler at Michigan 2 years ago, where he was within sight of the checkered flag and ran out of fuel. Last year, of course, came back and picked up his first kart FedEx Championship victory at Homestead Miami Speedway in Florida. Up for the 11th time, we have the yellow out. Let's learn more on Max Pappas now from Andrew Marriott.
Yeah, well, you saw the car being pushed back a few minutes ago. The Dyson crew actually bled the clutch. It took them about 5 minutes. Max sat there. Then he roared out of the pits. Obviously, it's okay. The clutch has been bled, and he's back in the race.
So we've got fluid now coming out. Well, of course, it could be water, but I suspect it's something worse, such as radiator fluid or oil. Safina's car still nosed into the guardrail. That has brought out our 11th full course caution, so we'll take a quick break and return live to the Rolex 24.
It's pit lane here at Daytona, and one man who isn't used to standing in a wet pit lane at Daytona, of course, is Kyle Petty. Kyle, this race just goes on and on.
On and on. When it's wet, when I'm down here, it's very quiet. There's no cars on the racetrack. Everything's pretty good.
Now, you're really enjoying driving this Porsche, aren't you?
I'm having an incredible time. You know, working with Roger Hawley, working with Orbit Racing with this group, Leo Henry got me involved with it, and it's just been a lot of fun. I tell you what, I've enjoyed going to the bus and watching Speed Vision and looking at all the email that people keep sending in. That's pretty cool. That's a neat way to get people involved, and you know, I hope a lot of other broadcasts pick up and copy Speed Vision.
They really are involved. Can I just ask you about the Dodge Winston Cup program? Is that making progress now?
Yeah, we feel pretty confident about it. Our cars were at Talladega. While I was down here, our cars were at Talladega with Buckshot Jones and our R&D team, so we were pretty pleased with the way it's run. You know, it's like some of these guys that's been running today. Some of this stuff's unproven that we're going to be busting out with the Dodge. The engine has not run a 500-mile race, and there's just some unproven things. But we're excited to have Dodge back in Winston Cup racing after a long absence. Last time I won here at Daytona in an ARCA race, I was in a Dodge, so I'm really looking forward to them being back.
When's the program move into Daytona and you start testing here?
We come in here Wednesday and start through inspection and everything on Thursday and hit the racetrack on Friday if the weather holds up. If the weather doesn't hold up, if the weather's like it is now, it'll be next week sometime.
Carl, I know you've taken a very keen interest in Grand Prix racing over the years. You've been to a couple of shops in England. I think you've been to some of the shops in England, and maybe we're going to convert you into a full-time road racer.
You haven't seen me drive through the infield yet. It's ugly. The weather's bad, but my driving's worse.
Oh, thanks very much. Great to see you smiling.
Can you feel the love in the old racetrack today?
I doubt that very much, though. Kyle is he's a well-rounded driver. He was terrific in Iowa.
Well, here we have another email here, which is from Stuart M. Dybel in North Carolina, who says, here's my question. Why aren't there more fans in the stands? Look at Le Mans and Monaco, people everywhere. Why can't we have that here? Bob Varty hit the nail on the head. He says, where are you, Bubba? You're in North Carolina. Why aren't you in the stand? I didn't say that. Bob said it.
What did I say? Can you feel the love? We'll take a break and be right back to Daytona. Stay with us. Daytona International Speedway, where we are still under a full course caution following a crash into the trackside guardrail in turn 1 by Josephina from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Now, there is the class-leading Porsche in the GT category and third in the overall of this race, now being led by a GTS car. And this car is still maneuvering, whereas the number 16 Dyson Racing car is not. So potentially this car will find itself in second place shortly. Let's get down to the pit lane and Calvin Fish.
Okay, well, Jim Downing has brought the car in. They're doing a driver change. I can't quite identify which driver is getting in. I spoke to Howard Katz, one of the other co-drivers. He said everything is running smooth. Now, this car is about a dozen laps behind that lead 16 car currently in SRP, which has been retired, so they need to keep running here. They should inherit the lead within about the next 20 to 30 minutes, and then this will be a real coup for Jim Downing and the boys. They keep coming back here year after year, and they just keep going around, and this thing is getting the laps done today without any major dramas, and they could score a class victory. Overall win is out of the question, it looks like, but certainly a class win in the sports racer prototype category for Jim Downing and this very reliable Mazda.
The Mazda Kudzu. The Kudzu chassis, designed and built in Jim Downing's shops in Atlanta, made for a ubiquitous plant that looks like ivy, grows all over everything in the South. In fact, the farmers say it grows so quickly you don't plant it, you drop it and run.
It just takes over everything, doesn't it?
It was brought to this country, I believe, by Jim Downing's grandfather at one of the expositions in the early part of the 20th century.
Have you ever seen a year where the weather has been any uglier than this one?
Well, unless you count it being 30 degrees colder, no, this is ugly, ugly, ugly.
In these conditions, what about the engine characteristics of the Mazda? Are they suited to these conditions, putting the power down nice and smooth?
The engine's fine. You know, our car's a low downforce car, and we've been running on the set. We run 3 hours instead of rain tires, so they're worn out with no downforce, so it's pretty slippery. I was going pretty slow out there, just trying to keep it on the course. Got a new set for AJ here, and hopefully we can get to the end.
I'm sure you're looking at the leaderboard and you realize that the 16 car is out and you keep creeping closer and closer. What would it mean to you to come here and score a class win?
Well, it'd be great. Obviously, we've had several class wins over the years here, and we've had a couple, third overall. So we won't have a good overall today, but to win the quote top class would be a thrill, and I've never won the SR1 class or Camel GT top class or whatever we called it over the years. So that's the biggest thrill if it comes about. But we've got 2 hours and some minutes to go, and just like poor Rob Dyson's car, same thing can happen to us.
Great performance by you and all the boys in the car.
Thank you.
Well, just to add to what Jim Downing there said about his tyres, we had an email here that said how many sets of tyres do the top teams go through, and what does that add up to in dollars? By the way, I love watching this race, and your coverage is excellent. The fact is that the top teams probably change tyres every stop, and the lead Corvette has made 28 stops so far, and they probably did change tyres every stop.
We are just past the top of the hour. That means less than 2 hours remaining in this incredible odyssey, the Rolex 24 at Daytona. We'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you if you're just tuning in. I'm Bob Varsha with David Hobbs and Sam Posey. Andrew Marriott and Calvin Fish are down in the pit lane. And right now, as we prepare to go green, let's bring you completely up to date on all that has happened through the preceding 22 hours of this incredible race. As usual at the start of the Rolex 24, it was a scramble as James Weaver took the field down to the green flag. A tremendous battle ensued, occasionally affected by outside forces such as Ralph Kellner taking a bit of tire debris to the side of his Ferrari. But it was all about the Dyson team early on. They took the lead for good at hour 7 and held it through hour 21. Of course, Dale Earnhardt and his son Dale Jr., a big part of the show. They have driven superbly. There have been incidents such as this one sparked by John Macaluso's sports racing prototype car that took out 2 other machines. Problems for the Earnhardt car. This was Kelly Collins pushing the car back in after they were unable to pit on schedule and ran out of fuel on the racetrack. Problems also for the Ferrari team. The 333 SP that battled so valiantly. This is Alan McNish going eyeball to eyeball with Butch Leitzinger in wet conditions. Absolute magic. The Corvette team hung tough, though, and the Earnhardts, as I mentioned, drove beautifully through some incredibly bad weather. We have seen rain on and off for the entire 24 hours, and Big E has really held up his end of the stick. The 31 White Lightning Porsche 911 GT3R Remember, the GT category has been right at or around the lead despite a few mechanical problems, and they could be in a position to score an historic podium. Problems also in the SRP2 class. The Archangel team that won the class championship last year suffered problems and this heavy crash that took one of their cars out of the race, but the other is still potentially in the running. A very scary moment on a very wet racetrack during the darkness. Then it was back to the Dyson team. James Weaver, Andy Wallace, and Butch Leitzinger driving superbly, but after some conservative moves to get to the finish, it all went wrong when the engine expired. An incredibly emotional moment with barely 3 hours to go in the race and a 27-lap lead, the better part of 100 miles to burn out front, when Butch Leitzinger switched off and walked in. Team owner Rob Dyson overcome by emotion. And then it was up to the Corvette team, Ron Fellows and Frank Freon and company, to move their car into the overall race lead and put themselves in position for an historic win, potentially the second straight for a GT category car here at Daytona, and the first for this immaculate and very big buck Chevy factory effort to bring America's sports car, the Corvette, back to the top of the sports car racing world.
Triple crown, yeah.
And it's just about to put another lap down on the Zero car, the Bitesec Canadian car, which really came into this race pretty highly touted. One of the GT1 Porsches, very expensive, beautiful cars. And unfortunately did not do well this weekend at all. 4 of them were here, and only one's left.
There is the leader in the GT category, the Fitzgerald Hobst car. Currently second, being passed by the overall race leader and the leader in the GTS category. But that 31 car will very shortly take over second place in the overall, and another astonishing performance by the 911. Earlier I mentioned, should this car or one of its Porsche compatriots win the class, which they almost certainly will, it'll be the 53rd class victory here at Daytona for Porsche. 27 of those scored by some iteration of the 911.
It certainly has been an unbelievably successful race car, and a very successful street car as well, I might add.
Absolutely. You think of all the different variations. I was reading in a Porsche book recently, there's probably 15 or 20 different 911 variations that have raced over the years. There is the Sports Racing Prototype 2 class leader. Earlier in a highlight package, you saw the sister car, the number 22, in a heavy crash on the banking. That car had led for some time, and when it left, this car took over and is currently running on the race lead. Calvin Fish has more on this.
Well, there are some gearbox difficulties with that lead car, Bob. In fact, first gear has gone completely, which really hurts them on the pit stop. They don't use the low gear through the hairpin turns, but once you have bits and pieces floating around in the gearbox, there's always concern it's going to get into some of the others and affect the whole gearbox. But Andy Lally, who's in the car right now, has really put that car on his back and drug it around here for the last 22 hours or so. I just spoke to the team manager, Mike Johnson. He said Andy's done about 10, 11 hours in that car, and he'll finish it out. He was slightly quicker than the guys in the drive, and when it turned wet, he was just streets ahead of the other guys in the car, so we needed his pace to try and get the car to the front. They would have probably had a 1-2 going here, but they had that accident exiting the chicane with the other car a little earlier this morning.
This is the new car. Last year it was a one-car team. That is the car that was the 22 that was knocked out of the race. This, the 21, is a brand new chassis. Hadn't turned a wheel until it got here to Daytona. It was built up by the team last weekend. On a Saturday, I believe, they received the car. I spoke with Larry Alberto, who shared the class championship last year, and he said they've always had to baby the gearboxes in this car, particularly the low gears, first and second. And we've certainly seen a lot of that. The SRP2 category, which didn't even exist in this race last year. It started in round 2 in Phoenix.
There's the AGT leader, the number 11 car.
Finally looking dirty, David. Somehow or another, these guys have managed to keep their car looking absolutely pristine.
It's being driven by Simon Gregg, whose father was Pete Gregg, and his cars never ever looked dirty
either. Absolutely right. I think they polished it at every stop.
This is the Hamilton Safe Motorsports Chevy Camaro, being driven not only by Simon Gregg, but Kenny Buck, Doug Mills, and Dick Greer, who has already won 3 times in the GT category here at Daytona. There's Max Pappas with a smile on his face. I tell you, that guy is almost impossible to get down. Let's go down to Andrew Marriott.
Oh, Max, you're still smiling, but I guess it's game over.
No, we are welding the gear knob. I think it was a problem on the gear lever. But, you know, the thing that got number 20 is 20 years old.
Are they going to try and bring the car back out?
Yeah, we will. That car was running perfect, just we couldn't downshift because the gear, you know, the gear synchronism broke the back, and actually you couldn't downshift. You were stuck in third gear because something broke, some mechanical part broke.
We're just shaking hands here with Nicholas Johnson, a new member of the team with Dyson. How have you enjoyed your first experience with Dyson?
Oh, this has been terrific for me, besides all the problems we had, of course, but it's just such a great opportunity for me to run with Team Dyson and with such co-drivers like Max and EFR and Rob himself. So I really enjoyed this first time here, so I really hope I can be able to come back with these guys and win next year.
A bit different to driving a BMW, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm probably going to end up to run with Tom Milner's team, PTG, the coming season there with Bill Arbelin, and with a V8 BMW M3 with Yokohama tires. I think that will be a tremendous season for us. I'm looking forward to that a lot as well. That'll be fun.
Nicholas, a couple of years ago, you did some IRL races. Have you put single-seaters behind you now?
No, I'm not going to put my single seat behind me at all, but hopefully, you know, I'll be able to do some racing with Dyson Racing, which, you know, I really hope will be a little bit better next time. But no, I think touring cars or GT racing is very popular in Sweden as well, so I'm looking forward to it.
Nicholas Johnson, back to you in the booth.
Interesting guy, Nicholas Johnson, a former world-class badminton player who took up auto racing, became so proficient at it that he has taught defensive driving tactics to the bodyguards for the Swedish royal family. It's just the beginning of his resume. The race continues. You've seen a little bit of Daytona's sports car history. We'll have a little more for you when we return to our live coverage, flag to flag at Daytona. The world, a car running on one headlight is called a pediddle. That's what Ron has in his hands right now. There's a look at Victory Lane, which has been enhanced greatly. It's quite the photo op these days. A little more than an hour away. Winners not only in the overall, but in all 5 classes will make their way to Victory Lane to face the assembled press from around the world. Now, we learned earlier how the chase for land speed records began the history of auto racing on the beaches of Daytona. In the second installment, we'll see how the racing evolved to the beach and road course and eventually Daytona International Speedway.
When the quest for the land speed record moved to Utah's Bonneville Salt Flats in the mid-1930s, many thought Sir Malcolm Campbell's final record run in 1935 might mark the end of motorsports in the Daytona Beach area. But among the interested observers of Campbell's final runs was a gentleman who had moved with his family from Washington, D.C. just a few months earlier. Bill France had first fallen in love with motorsports at the old board tracks in Laurel, Maryland. He was an auto mechanic by trade and wanted to move his family to a warmer climate. Daytona Beach found his favor. Following the loss of the speed record runs, the Daytona City Fathers came up with an idea to race stock cars on the sands of their famous beach, turning onto the adjacent paved highway to create an oval track. A timed event on March 8, 1936, was the first for the combination beach and road course. It was a mess. The turns developed deep ruts, and the event was a financial disaster. Milt Marion was declared the winner, while young Bill France placed 5th. 2 changes helped keep the beach racing events afloat until the start of World War II. A new mixture of sand, earth, and clay helped keep the turns consistent. And Bill France stepped in to help with the promotion and organization of the racing events that soon added motorcycles to the competition slate. Following World War II, France promoted motorcycle and stock car races on the beach with great success. Enough so for France to convene a meeting at the Streamline Hotel in December of 1947 that led to the formation of NASCAR. Daytona Beach would serve as the headquarters of France's racing organization. Under the NASCAR banner, racing on the beach and road course continued until 1958.
Number 3 is Goldsmith's 58 Pontiac, and it's led this race all the way. Starting from the pole position, Goldie has been averaging 103 miles an hour. Runner-up Curtis Turner of Roanoke, Virginia, is in a do-or-die effort as he bids to overtake the pace setter. Goldsmith hangs on and racks up a scant 2-second victory over Curtis Turner in a close finish. Paul Goldsmith and his Pontiac withstood the challenge of both Turner and the dangerous course to win the last Grand National to be run over Daytona's soft sand.
Racing legends flocked to the warm Florida sun every February for the opportunity to try their luck on the famous beach course. But Bill France envisioned a permanent facility that could showcase auto racing in his adopted Florida hometown. He used all of his business contacts and racing savvy to design and build the Daytona International Speedway. Opening in February of 1959, the Speed Palace was an immediate success. Years ahead of its time in concept and design, Daytona Beach was assured that it would have a permanent place in auto racing history that would extend into the next century. And how far it all has come. You can see some of the cars that are symbolic of those many eras, including the late Sir Malcolm Campbell's Bluebird land speed record racer in the museum here at Daytona International Speedway, all part of Daytona USA, which is being expanded to what appears to be about twice its previous size to add new exhibits. Great place to visit if you're in this part of the country. Well, there's the number 31 Porsche 911 GT3R from White Lightning Racing with an all-star driver lineup, about to pass the number 16. In fact, it has passed the Dyson Racing stricken number 16, the former race leader, for second place in the overall. It's going to be a GT kind of year here at the Rolex 24. Lucas Luhr from Germany, specialist in these Porsche 911s on the driving straight. Randy Post with Mike Fitzgerald. Christian Menzel. Doesn't get much better than that. We'll take a break and return for more of our live coverage from the Rolex 24. Stay with us.
Forever to start in this race is Clint Field. You've had about 3 or 4 stints. Clint, tell us about your experience over the last 20 hours.
It's just been a great learning experience. I got some seat time in the rain. I got some seat time in traffic. It was exciting, and we had a recurring clutch problem, so we're not up there like we'd like to be, but we might finish.
What's it like with about 600 horsepower in these conditions, deep pedals? It must really make a real difficult driving thing for you to be out there and really just trying to get the power to the ground.
With 600 horsepower, it's always ready to spin whether it's wet or dry, so you got to be careful with the throttle. But I tried to do that.
Well, congratulations on surviving. Andrew, I believe you have one of the Chamberlain drivers.
Yeah, I've got the prettiest one here, Milka. Milka, you've had a difficult race, but are you enjoying your Daytona 24, your first one?
Yes, it's very funny. I enjoy it a lot. It's very difficult because all time rain and dry. The car have a fault. The differential broken, but we are in race now, and it's good. Now we are in 6 in the GTS, and we hope finish.
Now, you come from Venezuela. Is Johnny Cecotto a hero of yours?
Yes, Johnny Cecotto is from Venezuela.
Is he a hero?
No, he's not here, but everybody knows Johnny Cecotto.
I was going to say hero, but that's Milka Dunn out there. She's enjoying it. And just looking to the left there, very famous face from Grand Prix Racing running this car is Doug Bebb. And Doug Bebb used to work for Williams Grand Prix.
Well, we have lots of threads for conversation right now. Milka Duno from Caracas, Venezuela, drove in the Women's Global GT Series, an all-female racing series last year. Make that the year before. And down the pit lane, Calvin is standing by with it as a very, very joyous moment and a very difficult race for Team Seattle. Take it away, Calvin.
Well done, kids. You're about to celebrate here, buddy. You complete this lap and you'll hit the $1 million mark for that children's hospital.
Yeah, we're elated, Calvin. Just absolutely elated. When those 2 cars go across start-finish right now, over 5-year effort, that's $1 million for our children's hospital in Seattle. Team Seattle represents the most beautiful city in our nation and the most accommodating children's health care facility in the nation, Seattle Children's Hospital. We love our city. We love Speed Vision, Daytona Speedway, and Grand Am. Couldn't do it without you guys. Every single dime of that money goes to Children's Hospital to look after little kids like Cammie here. So thanks so much.
Everyone at Speed Vision congratulates you on your whole effort here today.
Thanks so much. You guys are top notch, top notch.
Well, thanks, boys. Little Cammy has been through a lifetime of medical treatments, and we're glad that the team is able to help defray that for her and other kids who could use help in Seattle. I know Cammy wanted to visit her favorite racing driver this weekend. That happens to be Kyle Petty. I know Don was going to try to make that happen. I wonder if it ever did. She certainly looks like she's having a great time. Joining us in the booth now, the Grand Marshal of this year's Rolex 24, Jackie Stewart. Jackie, did you get much sleep during the overnight hours?
Oh, yes. I went to sleep very early in the morning. I've only just got in from Europe, so my time clock told me to go to bed early. I'm glad I'm not a racing driver.
Let's take a look at you in action, Jackie, as the Team Seattle celebrates that $1 million mark. Little Cammy will have a great story to go home and tell her friends about. Kids, if you're watching from Seattle, that's your team. Now let's go back to Jackie Stewart in 1971, and you had to overcome a bit of a problem in Monaco to win this race.
Yes, well, first of all, I was being filmed by Roman Polanski because there was a movie being made at that time, and apart from that, the car had only, instead of 4 brakes, it had 2 brakes. We broke a balance bar on the braking system on the warm-up lap. But luckily I managed to lead the race from the beginning and weren't too heavily pressed. But Monte Carlo is always a nice motor race to win. It's the most glamorous, the most colourful, and really the most exciting in the world. Ken Tyrrell there, who hasn't been very well recently. And I was working actually with one of your colleagues, ABC, at that time, doing a little bit of work during the race even. So it was a bit of a groundbreaking. That looks like a slow stop there.
And the balance bar broke on the pace lap.
Yeah, on the warm-up lap.
Jackie, you speak of something very interesting, though. Your dominance in that era was such that people accepted the pace that you set for the race. You probably couldn't have gotten away with that a couple of years earlier, but people saw you in the lead and they said, well, he's out there, and they took it as inevitable.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. It only came to me at the end of '68. When Jim Clark had died in the spring of '68, there was a wait to see who was going to be the person to race against, if you like, and be the pace setter. And at Watkins Glen that year, I found out that if I went slower, the field went slower. If I went faster, the field went faster. And that was the first time I was aware that I could play a part in pacing a race.
We had a quick look at the number 20 car, which has been brought back out into the pit lane, and we expect we'll get back into the race. I know Andrew Marriott has a question for Jackie from the pit lane.
Yeah, hi, Jackie. My history tells me you did quite a bit of Le Mans racing, particularly in a very interesting car, a jet engine Rover or something. What was that all about?
Well, I drove a Le Mans in, I think it was '65, with the gas turbine Rover, which was incredibly slow. Maston Gregory, an American, won the race with Jochen Rindt in an LM Ferrari and lapped us every 3 laps.
Jackie, it was my first Le Mans, that race. I remember it well.
Well, I'll blame you in that case, Andrew, because we tossed up to see who would start the race, and the one who lost the toss had to start the race.
That was Graham Hill, wasn't it?
It was Graham, but he had to promise to run it into the sandbank at the end of Mulsanne straight in the first lap. He did it, but he didn't do it properly.
Didn't get it done.
Is it true, Jackie, in those days you actually, at Le Mans, used to carry a shovel in the car to sort of dig it out of these sandbags?
Yeah, absolutely. You did have a shovel in the car, and the gas turbine took in some of that sand on that first lap, and in fact put the temperatures up. We were running the whole race at a reduced pace, but we finished, I think, 11th and were the first British car home. Pretty poor performance, really, but it was really...
You did finish it, I couldn't remember you finishing. I remember you driving that.
No, it was boringly long, the race.
But that's all right, because Jackie kept the shovel and used it to shovel the money into his suitcase that he got for driving.
Jackie, you've been involved at the highest level of motorsport for so long, and you began in an era when we saw drivers jump from series to series. Someone would drive open wheel in every open wheel formula. They would drive sports cars. They might drive saloons or touring cars. Do you ever see that era coming again when top drivers can be seen in all different forms of cars?
I'd like to see it. I enjoyed it. And the fact that you became versatile, the fact that you were working with different engineers, with different mechanics, with different team managers, with different manufacturers, the cultural ability for the drivers to understand all of these different systems and procedures and people was a great way to go. It was a great learning curve for me, and I think it stood me in good stead in later years. But the drivers today are so specialized, it would seem, which is unfortunate.
You were one of the first, really. two really special.
Yeah.
I mean, you didn't do much. You did Le Mans a couple of times. You did it with Colonel Hawkins, with Ronnie Hall, and you did it with
I was only a spare driver then. I wasn't a great big driver like David Hobbs.
Right.
I was the spare driver, and in fact I never raced in it. I just was the backup driver there, and I got a lot of sleep while you were doing other things, David. But no, I did a little bit. I did the Can-Am at the same time as Formula One. I did some a couple of Indy years while I was still driving Formula One. But then later in my career, I realized that if I wanted to win Formula One consistently and be a regular winner, I had to focus.
Yeah. I think that was part of the psychology of it too, was that you were so identified with Formula One, you didn't have weak appearances in other forms of the sport where you couldn't have the control that you had in Formula One.
Yeah, but you know, Sam, if you remember back in Formula 2 races sometimes, and David Hobbs was racing at the same time as I was in Formula 2, but there would be Graham Hill, Jim Clark, there would be Denny Hulme and Jack Brabham and Jackie Stewart and Chris Amon and Dick Atwood, Tatty Atty,
right.
and yourself.
And Jochen Rindt, that's what
exactly.
spurred jumped Jochen Rindt to fortune.
That's right. So we were racing, there was like a Formula 1 grid and a Formula 2 event,
right.
And we raced all over Europe like that, and I did that until basically 71.
Jackie, you've always been a prominent spokesman for racing safety. Give us your assessment, if you will, about where we stand in motorsports with regard to how safe the sport can be.
Well, I don't believe it can ever be safe enough. And the great thing about our technology within the automotive industry on a global scale is that there's always new minds and new ways of doing things. And I think that's improving daily and monthly. But I think it has to have organizations to adapt and adopt those new technologies. And sometimes there's even a lack of interest in doing that because it costs money. Whether it's for a manufacturer of a car, whether it's a track owner, whether it's a promoter, whether it's a racing driver. Frankly, there should be minimum standards, and it's quite interesting. I'm sure I'll be considered unpopular for saying this, but I'm very surprised that Dale Earnhardt's using an open-face helmet, for example.
And he doesn't have anything around his neck at all.
No neck protection, it would appear. Now, we would not be allowed to race like that. In an FIA World Championship Formula 1 race, it just would not be permitted because you are giving the medical people a rougher time than perhaps they should have if, in the case of an accident, that type of head injury is something that comes around. And it does, particularly, not even a sedan car. Sometimes you can get debris coming in. And really a full-face helmet is a better form of protection, but that's a small thing and that's a personal thing for Dale, and obviously he's thought about it. This is not something new to him, but I think there has to be, for the younger generation coming up, there's got to be good thinking.
We're going to have to go to a break in a moment. I know you're here representing Rolex, which has just been announced in the past 24 hours as the series-long title sponsor of the Grand Am Road Racing Association, but I know a lot of fans out there want to know about how your son Paul is doing.
Well, he's doing well. His cancer's in remission. He's been very well treated at the Mayo Clinic up in Rochester, Minnesota. They've been terrific for him. They found a cancer early. It's a very unusual cancer. It's not a tumor, it's a lymphoma, but an unusual form. Maybe only 10 cases in the world in a year, apparently. So they've got to keep an awful good eye on it. I spoke to him yesterday. I'll speak to him today. He's in terrific form, physically better than I've ever seen him in his life. He's got a big test coming up in about 2 or 3 weeks' time, and then we all pray to God that the cancer's staying away, and hopefully it'll be a long-term solution.
Well, please give him our best on behalf of all of us here at Speed Vision and our television audience.
Well, thank you.
That is Jackie Stewart, 3-time Formula One world champion and spokesman for Rolex watches, the new title sponsor of the Grand Am Road Racing Association. The number 3 Corvette right there has slipped up into 4th place. It's a GT kind of day, and congratulations to Team Seattle on $1 million.
The first big event of Speed Weeks is about to begin. Some of the most famous racing drivers in the world are here, including Indianapolis winner A.J. Foyt, World Sports Car Champ Sterling Moss, Roger Ward, another Indianapolis winner, and Paul Goldsmith, motorcycle and racing car champion. Here's the traditional Le Mans start, where at the signal, each driver must run for his car, jump in, and take off. A.J. Foyt here seems a bit eager. for the 3-hour Grand Touring and Sports Car Race. This event takes place over a combination road and track course, which includes the famous 2.5-mile oval with its 31-degree bank turns, plus the infield road course. The best of all speedways and the worst of all possible roads condensed for a total of 3.81 miles per lap. Halfway through the grind, cars pit for a refill, which is about all you've got time for in this race. Lift the hood and you're in trouble. Roger Penske gets off again in his Cooper Monaco. Go, boy. Here's George Constantine in his Ferrari V12. Bill Hill in another Ferrari. Jim Clark from London in a Lotus Elite. And now Dan Gurney in number 96 comes charging through into first position. The race grinds toward its finish, taking its merciless toll of men and machines. With only about 2 minutes left in the race, Dan Gurney feels his engine starting to fail. Dan knows he's a full lap ahead of his nearest competitor, so Dan thinks fast. Watch him now as he brakes to a stop, 14 feet from the finish line. Crazy? Crazy like a fox. Dan knows that if he goes 1 inch over that line before the 3 hours are up, the rules will force him to complete another full lap. And his engine will never make it. 1 minute, 40 seconds to go. But Dan also knows he's still 3 minutes ahead of the traffic. There's the flag. The 3 hours are up. And now, Dan coolly hits his starter button and rolls across the line on electric power. Dan coasts merrily down the track to the infield. The winner, 46 seconds ahead of second place. What a long minute that must have been. Dan Gurney rolls into the winner's circle to collect his trophy from NASCAR President Bill France and shares honors with England's famed Sterling Moss.
Well, just one of the golden moments here at Daytona over the years. We should point out that David Hobbs was sitting on the grid and raced in that 1962 Daytona Continental. His car, with an automatic transmission built by his father, was in the hands of Jimmy Clark at the request of Colin Chapman.
That red and blue Elite we saw a couple of times there was it. And that blonde bombshell standing next to Dan Gurney. I have a picture of myself and that lady at the
Oh my, I hope not a compromising picture. And by the way, how about those old Corvettes juxtaposed now with this new Corvette? They've come a long way, haven't they?
There you go. I suppose that's how history is in racing. We saw one of them make a quick stop. Andy Pilgrim remained in, just tires and fuel, and on their way. We're getting into those magic waning moments of a 24-hour race when we decide who gets to drive when all the flash bulbs pop at the end of the day. We'll be back with more of our historic flag-to-flag coverage, the first time at the Rolex 24. Stay with us. 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, Speed Vision News Race Week. Ron Fellows is at the controls of the number 2 Chevy Corvette, which is knocking at the door of history, as is the car behind it, the number 31 White Lightning Porsche 911. Let's get down to the pit lane.
Well, another member of that lead, Ben, is Chris Neifel. Chris, it's one thing to be in the lead, but trying to hold the lead under these conditions must put a lot of pressure on all of you guys.
Well, I guarantee there's a lot more pressure standing here than out there. The only guy that doesn't have a knot in his stomach right now is Ron.
Tell us about the day. I mean, the car seems to be flawless. We spoke to Ron yesterday, and he said, you know what, we're not thinking about the overall win. We just want to win the class. But having come so close last year by just over 30 seconds, you had to have had that in the back of your mind that you could capture the overall win here today.
We knew it was possible, but we also knew we needed help for that to happen. Our goal was go out and take care of business in our class and let the rest come back to us. And, you know, by the hopefully good graces, you know, another hour and 15 minutes or so to go, it might come to us. But, you know, it's an important day for Corvette racing, but we got to see it through.
They're going to hold their breath a little bit longer here, guys. Andrew, you have a story on the 31 car?
Well, a routine stop there for the 31 car, and the man that's watching it is a man who has driven in 56 Grand Prix, finished 4th at Monaco back in 1989, Alex Cappy. Alex, last year you drove the Rizzi Ferrari, this year in a Porsche GT3. Something very different, but this time I think you're going to finish the race.
Was really very good race for us because we started with a GT car. It's crazy that the GT car is a second overall, third, and also we are in third position in our class and in fifth position overall. So it's really crazy. Last year I was here with a favorite car, with the car to beat, and everything was happening, and we was very unlucky. The car the race was a disaster because we don't have any chance. This season I decided to go back a little bit because with a GT car, but I think that is so good because the car is very good to drive and the team is fantastic. They did a very, very great job during all the race, very fast in the driver change and the tire change, and I'm really happy. Probably it's my first Daytona finish.
Alex, you drove in over 50 Grand Prix in the late 80s, the early 90s. You're still racing. You must love racing.
Yeah, I think it's very far away for me to remember because I think I'm quite young, but because I started at 21 to race in Formula 1. So I spent 5 years there, was really great days, but if you don't have the best car, you can show nothing because it's too much technology, too much, it's no space for the driver. And here it's much better, you have more fun, you can drive much more, changing conditions. I really enjoy myself in this kind of race.
Thanks. He actually drove one of the worst ever Grand Prix cars, the Andrea Moda, but did some good things in footwork arrows.
All right, thanks very much, Andrew. Formula One has been very much a part of Daytona over the years. If you just look down the list of Rolex winners, Gurney, Rodriguez, Hill, Bandini, Sifford, Andretti, Ickx, and Boutsen. And there are literally dozens of other drivers with Grand Prix experience who have raced here, not the least of which are sitting in the booth with me now, Sam Posey and David Hobbs.
Alex Cappy, it's fascinating to watch him because when you and I were doing Formula One back in the late 80s, 87, 88, 89, Alex was a sort of big part of the Formula One scene, and it kind of passed him by. If you don't drive the right car at the right time for long enough, you're soon out and some new kids in. As he said, he was only ever so young when he started, 21. But here he is, still racing and obviously still having a good time.
And of course, the biggest name of all at Daytona over the years has to be that of Porsche, going on their 53rd class victory. Here's a look at some of the great brands or some of the great models that have come here to Daytona and won. Great GTP machines for Al Holbert's team. So many iterations. So many based on that same formula that Dr. Ferry Porsche laid down so many years ago. The flat six, horizontally opposed engine.
17 outright wins for Porsches and a couple more wins where they had their engine in a chassis built by somebody else. Just the most remarkable record, a higher percentage of wins relative to the number of races held at a major track than exists anywhere. Does that make any sense? In other words, they dominated Daytona.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it all comes down to reliability, as you used to tell me, David. You start them up at the beginning of the race and they go rip, 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 rip. Turn them off at the end of the race and they're still going rip, 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 rip.
Those 962s had a regular key to start and the push button started. Start up at the beginning of the 24 hour and come in idle for 20 minutes at the pit stop and put it on the truck at the end of the race, and 2 weeks later you take it off the truck and do at least the first practice session or two.
A new era is beginning, the era of the Corvette here at the Rolex 24. Second last year, in position for a first this year. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Daytona, and the leader is in the pits. The number 2, driven by Ron Fellows. The crew goes to work. Tires have been changed. Fuel is complete. Meanwhile, they're topping up the fluids. There's some pressurized canisters that go into the passenger side. Ron gets the okay to fire it back up. They've gone from full west to an intermediate, a hang-groove slick, to try and handle these conditions, and they're going to try and keep Ron in the car to the finish. They have about a 19-lap lead to about another 30 minutes of running, and they may be able to clinch this way before the finish. And Andrew Marriott is down in the 63 pit.
Yes, this looks like totally routine stop here for the car, which is amazingly leading its category now. The fuel is still going in, and well, it's all looking good down here for the Kutsu Master. The car is off the jacks, and they accelerate away.
33 laps out of the race lead, running in 12th in the overall running, but within 8 laps of passing the stationary number 16 Dyson racing machine for the victory in the sports racing prototype category. As I said earlier, the Downing team will likely finish on the podium, second or third perhaps, in the sports racing prototype category as we come up to the 1 hour remaining mark in this race. Now here's our sports racing prototype 2 category leader, and there's a lot of work going on this car. Andrew is there.
Yes, but it's fairly standard work. I think the man sitting at the wheel is the man that's been going so quickly in this car, Andy Lally, the man who's been a standout in the Barber Dodge Series last year, raced in Britain, that Palmer Audi Series, and he's been much quicker, but he is the professional driver amongst this group. They are putting a new set of wets on the car. I don't think there's any other dramas. Andy just debriefing with the team management here, and well, this looks good for these boys in the 21 car.
Andy Lally
put on some intermediate type tires there. They took a very wet looking rear tire off and put what looked like an intermediate on there.
So nobody's gone completely conservative yet.
Well, it goes with an hour to go and the clouds are still pretty low. It doesn't look like it's actually going to rain again. There's a lot of puddles around this place. And if you get pushed offline, you know, there's still a lot of cars running out there. And you suddenly come across a bit of traffic and you're pushed offline if you haven't got the right tires for it. But obviously you have to take care of the intermediates, especially on the bank.
I can't sign off on Andy Lally without pointing out that he comes from Northport, New York, home of the Racing Park family. Bob Park and his son Steve, who drives in the Winston Cup Series for Dale Earnhardt, and it's also my hometown.
A couple of emails here. One from James Offit in Milwaukee and one from Ron Rayleigh in Cincinnati, both asking the same question as a result really of the Leipzig coming up. During disregarding the cost and time considerations, is it possible under the rules to change the engine and still have a good chance? Well, they could have changed the engine probably and maintained the lead, but unfortunately the rules prohibit it. You can't change the engine.
We had a quick look there at the AGT, American GT category leader, the Buck Mills, Greer, and Gregg machine. As the Corvette continues on its way, now this stop is taking some time for the 21 leader.
The Corvette, I think, it's 0.29 drag coefficient, which is very low. A stock machine, if that is, one of the most aerodynamic cars on the road, and that is a natural
an Indy car or an
exactly
machine.
A natural advantage if you just happen to have a body that moves easily through the air.
Of course, these cars here wouldn't have such a low coefficient of drag because they have that big wing on the back.
Right, but if you start with a low, you're starting with an advantage of some kind.
Much easier to find that compromise that gives you optimal speed for an entire lap.
Another question just coming from Steve Cochran wants to know, are all the cars running currently rear-wheel drive, or do some of them have front-wheel drive? All rear drive out there at the moment.
That's the number 56 Cycle Motorsport Porsche GT3 RS, the newest iteration, the Porsche 911 model. Handled by Gabriel Rosa, Fabio Babini, and Alex Caffey, whom we heard from earlier. And those first three were the members of the GT winning category last year in a shocking upset in that class. Now let's get back down to Calvin Fish.
Well, Doug Feehan is the project manager for this whole Chevrolet effort. And Doug, this has the makings of being a very special week. If you can hang on and take the overall win, and with the Earnhardts on the team, had to have been a lot of fun, whatever happens today.
It's been a real experience. I got to tell you, Calvin, you know I've done this for a long, long time, and this certainly ranks right up there. I don't like to talk about a win before we have it. But should it come down, I think it's going to rank right up there with one of the greatest ones. It's great for the brand. It's certainly great for General Motors, the greatest car maker on the planet. It's great for the team, and I think it's great for the Earnhardts, too, as well as sports car racing.
It's been a a 2-year project, Doug. Last year you came so close. What did you walk away from Daytona last year and say we had to do differently coming here for 2001?
Well, we actually ran a perfect race last year with the exception of a fueling problem. And I can tell you we spent the entire year revisiting that issue, from the fueling rig down to the way the car fills. We knew it was going to be pit stops that win or lose this deal, and that's what we worked on.
Speed Vision are doing the Grand Slam of endurance racing this year, and you're going to be at all 4 of these events. Which one are you really going for? I mean, this is great, the 24-hour, if you can win that today. Is Le Mans bigger, or are they on an even playing field?
Well, for my job security, that event would be Le Mans.
Overall win or just class? I mean, what do you think going there? Those Audis and those boys are awfully fast.
It would be rather presumptuous of me to think overall I'd be satisfied with class, and I know my boss would too.
All right, mate. Best of luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, they have a right to be happy. They've worked hard to get to this point, but of course, as it always is in racing in the corporate world, it's only the beginning. That 56 Porsche, by the way, is 3rd in class. We'll have more in a moment.
23 hours ago, 80 cars and over 300 drivers started this race on an overcast, scowly sort of North Florida day. The weather set the stage for what long-distance racing is all about, which is toughing it out. There's the traffic. There are the pit stops. The changing conditions. The moments when things go all wrong. The long stretches when you forget the outside world exists. Then the last hours come, and any pleasure you might have had in surviving is tempered by the fear that having come so far, you might go out with the finish in sight.
Thank you, Sam. That about sets the theme for the final hour of our flag-to-flag live coverage of the Rolex 24 at Daytona. Waiting for the end, listening for that odd sound, hoping to see the checkered flag.
A sweet moment there for the Corvette as it passes the Viper. The winner, of course, of this race just by 30 seconds over the Corvette last year.
Amazing race last year, and what an amazing race this year, but for the entirely different reason. A huge lead, a dominant performance by the Dyson team that has held this race by the neck for at least 18 hours, suddenly saw that massive 27-lap lead go away with a bang from the engine compartment.
And we know they've done everything to mitigate against that happening. They're running high gears, they put in a bigger engine, they revved it a lot less. I mean, they did absolutely everything to make this a 24-hour car. Still an awesome part let go in the engine.
Right, I'm on my way.
There's
the number 3 Corvette, currently shown 4th overall, second to its sister car in the GTS category. There's the 86, excuse me, that's the number 34 Porsche. As these two cars have dominated the GTS category, although the 3rd place car in class, Porsche 911 GT1, in the hands of an all-Canadian driver lineup, is not all that far behind, about 8 laps at this point. And that is still not an insurmountable hurdle in the final hour of this race.
Absolutely not. If one of these cars was to stop now, that 8 laps would be eaten up. But anything that's more than between 15 and 20 laps behind at this stage isn't going to make up much ground if the car in front of it stops now.
It's going to be an interesting leaderboard, to be sure, when the race is over. And as we say so often in sports, the final score probably will not tell the story of this race, because the Dyson team will be firmly on the podium in the sports racer prototype category, even though that car will not have run for several hours. GTS class, the GT class, which has been basically the best race of the entire day, will be very, very close. There's the 01 Porsche 911 GT1 I was talking about.
That came in looking like such a strong car. Terrific driver lineup. Some very skillful drivers at the wheel, and of course a wonderful car. Probably when it was built, one of the most expensive cars of that type ever built, and didn't quite live up to expectations of this race that we thought it would.
Number 01 car from Beitzek Motorsport. Harry Beitzek, James Holton, John Brenner, Larry Schumacher. Not an entirely Canadian lineup. Larry Schumacher, currently driving, the former GT class champion in American sports car racing, is from Cincinnati, Ohio, and he actually owns one of these cars, but not the one he's driving right now. It's owned by Klaus Beitzek.
A lot of dry line out there, Bob, because you can see that the track is changing color there. It's getting lighter. It's definitely drying up everywhere. So I guess we're going to see some of these guys come in for a pit stop to change the tires, because they certainly don't want to run the risk of throwing a tread on one of these bank turns, and which of course does so much damage to these cars.
A.J. Smith from Voorhees, New Jersey is about to do the honors for the Downing team, taking that Mazda-powered kudzu chassis into a tie with the idle Dyson car for first in class. And if you were with us earlier, you heard the team owner and car builder Jim Downing say, I have never won in the very top category, although he's won numerous championships in sedans and in the smaller, what is now the SRP2 category, for the smaller, lighter, less powerful prototypes. That day is coming today for Jim Downing. Just one of the many great stories. And there's the 74 Robinson racing car. The car owner, George Robinson, is behind the wheel. I know that says Jack Baldwin, but that is Robinson in the car. At least that's Robinson's helmet, although Jack may be wearing it. 17th overall, a litany of problems for that car, but they have gotten up off the canvas time after time after time. Looks like they're going back behind, perhaps for the final time in this final hour. Now, Jeremy Dale has been monitoring your email submissions, and I believe he has a good one or two out of the more than 10,000 we have received, Jeremy.
Well, you know, you try and have a little fun and play a little joke, and of course there had been plenty of positive emails about David Hobbs, and I was making a joke, as you guys know, but a few people didn't realize that, and the floodgates have now opened, David. You'll be happy to know. So I just want you to know that Robert DeJournette from California says that David Hobbs is the greatest race commentator ever. That should get you the Rolex watch,
Absolutely,
David.
He has been up all night.
And by the way, what is Nigel Mansell doing these days?
What is Nigel Mansell doing? Playing golf.
Running his golf course.
I think maybe he was looking for an impersonation.
Supposedly.
Nigel, I'm playing golf, you know, my racket's not too good, the club broke. I was going at the ball, I had it lined up, you know, and the club wouldn't hit it straight, and the ball missed the hole. It's not my fault, it's the club's fault.
Poor guy's not here to defend himself. He actually might become a television commentator of all things. I understand ITV, who handles Formula One in Great Britain, is talking to Nigel Mansell about coming on board as a commentator. Can you imagine?
Well, David, the floodgates have opened, so...
Good. I saw there's one here that says that he's looking forward to Le Mans. He says, I rule. And he also says in brackets, or she says in brackets, Becky Soto, this is from Los Angeles, she also says, I agree about the watches too. So if we keep up the pressure enough here, things may change. Somebody else said that she's noticed throughout the coverage that many cars begin to blink their headlights as they drive down the pit road. Can you tell me the purpose of this? Well, really it's just to let everybody in the pits know that they are coming in, and some people do have signals.
That's responding to a message from the pit saying, yes, I know, here I am, help me find my pit. Crossing the finish line, A.J. Smith now takes over the lead in the sports racer prototype category. What a day it will be for Jim Downing and his stalwart crew. We're in the final hour here. 53 minutes and change remaining in the 39th Rolex 24. Don't go away.